Rook f5 draw! Rook f5 draw!
Wow. Unbelievable.
He squandered it!
Unbelievable.
Rook takes f3!
Oh my god.
And black will win the newly promoted queen!
So if you think Danya's getting excited over that, wait till you see the climax of this game, because there's another twist after that clip you've just seen. So that full clip coming plus the twist, right? Now let's quickly set some scenes here. So this is the Chess World Cup. It's the final 32. Vidit Gujrathi is playing with white. He's an Indian Grandmaster, 28 years old, 2700 plus, very strong player. And his opponent is Matthias Bluebaum, German, 26 years old, also 2600 and incredibly strong. And they're having a marathon match. They've played 8 games, cannot be separated. Some people just played 2 games, right, in this knockout format. So they're now in a sudden death, pure tension on the board. So here Vidit, he kicks off with d4. Now we get this c4 stuff, knight c3, invitation to play the Nimzo Indian, but d5 selected, going back into a queen's gambit declined. We get the exchange variation. These are standard opening moves. White does the usual setup, gets the bishop out, gets the knight out. Black puts a question to this bishop and it just drops back to f4. White wants to keep the bishops. Yes, you lost a bit of time here and back here, but you got your bishop outside the pawn chain. It's active. And now c5 from black is a double-edged sword because you get great activity. Let me show you a couple more moves. But you now give white the opportunity to take on c5 and leave you with an isolated queen's pawn. Why would you damage your own structure like this? Well, when you've got the IQP, you do have activity. You've got open files for your heavy pieces, you've got outposts for knights and things like that. So as long as there's pieces on the board, you can generate attacks. What's white going to try and do will blockade the pawn, maybe win the pawn, trade down pieces. This is the strategic battle. Rook c1 hits the open file. Bishop d6 challenges this strong piece. And after captures, queen recaptures. White plays this very grandmasterly move, a bishop retreat to b1. What's that all about? Well, you open up the queen now and you stop black from playing pawn to d4. Very often, black wants to liquidate that pawn if they can, but now you can't do that. So we get bishop e6, developing, covering the pawn, and knight e2. A game might look weird to underdevelop the knight, but it's heading for d4 to blockade the pawn. Sometimes even comes to f4 to pressure. Rook a d8 and queen a4. Activating that queen, preparing to bring a rook here. So bishop d7 immediately plays against the queen, setting up ideas of moving the knight, hitting the queen with the x-ray. So it drops back, we get knight a5, the queen moves from the attack, hits the knight in response, and so queen b6 covers. Now white puts the question to the queen and, like said, wants to get them off the board and then try and win this pawn. And black obliges because actually they didn't have much better. If you try and keep the queens on, white can kind of force the issue. So we get rook c8 hitting the open file, bishop d3, its job was done with the retreat. Now we get knight c6, challenging this key square, and rook c to d1, a mysterious looking move. But again, it's all about pressuring this pawn, and this bishop does a nice job of covering c2. So after this exchange, there's no invasion point for the rook. I mean, the knight also covers. So we get rook c7, preparing to double, bishop c2. Kind of a strange looking move, but potentially ideas of coming here, pressuring the pawn. Bishop b5 though starts to interrupt the white plans. We get rook f to e1 and this rook doubles on the file, pressures the bishop. So now it drops all the way back. Maybe white wants to go a3, bishop a2, pressure the pawn. But bishop a4, really annoying move, creating some disharmony. Is disharmony a word? Not sure. b3 provoked, and now you're not bringing the bishop to this diagonal anytime soon. So the bishop drops back. We get pawn f3, covering some knight jumps. G6 and now G4. Another point of F3, you know, adding some support. White gets the majority attack rolling here. You've got a nice 4 on 3. And here after King G7, King F2, we get a really nice black remaneuver, Knight G8. Where's that one going? Well, after Pawn H4, Knight E7. So you still cover this pawn, but you've got some extra kind of jump opportunities, you know, if this pawn ever moved. Bit more active than from F6. Rook H1, white switching plans, looking to roll the kingside pawns. Knight C6 challenge the centre, and now another classic grandmasterly retreat, knight to E2, opening the rook to attack, and after Knight E7 back, Knight F4, pressuring the pawn, now trying to win it, the blockading job is done. We get Bishop E6 and G5, secures this knight outpost on F4, and now here black makes a mistake. They go rook to H8, and this isn't a good one. You should have kept the rooks on the file. Rook C5 was best, adding some protection. But now we get an exchange. King recaptures, and this is just brilliant from Vidit because he knows when to switch plans, especially because there's no Bishop A2 stuff adding any pressure. So instead, he goes E4. Now, why would you help black liquidate the weakness? Well, here's the point. After captures, he exchanges that weakness for new weaknesses. He chops off the bishop, pawn recaptures, and bishop recaptures. And this is one of the problems with the king not being here. It's a bit away from the action, and you've now got all of these black pawns on light squares. White's got a light squared bishop, black doesn't, and these pawns are split. So advantage for white in the endgame. Plus this open file with better invasion points than what black's got in response. And already black goes wrong. In time pressure, look at the clocks on the left. So the best move here was Knight F5 immediately, covering D6, and if white takes, well, at least you repair the structure. But King G7 was played, really natural, but now white gets Rook D6, and a huge squeeze comes on the position. So King F7 covers the pawn. Now we get this rook sliding to B6, keeping pressure on B7, and this pawn here. We get Knight D5, covering the bishop's line, but this is not the computer's favourite move. It wanted Knight C6, but then you start running into this pawn storm coming, really uncomfortable. So here, white takes. Now, why would you give up bishop for knight when we talked about the power of that bishop with all the pawns on light squares? Well, again, Vidit is trading down to an exceptional endgame. So he goes king e3, and there's a huge problem with this pawn. This one's massively pressured. The rook's tied down to here. There's just such a huge difference between the kings and the rooks for both sides. So rook c2, excellent play from Bluebaum. Note this for your own games. If you're under pressure and you're worse, well, try and confuse the matter and go for counterplay. So a4 now played to protect this pawn. We get rook g2 attacking this one, king f4, king e7. Why would you march your king into the check? Well, it's coming over to the queen side to support the run of this pawn. Rook b6 check. Another pawn drops off the board. d4. Now rook back, preparing to push this g pawn. We get king b4, rook d8 comes behind the d pawn, and you don't want to take here, lose your only source of counterplay. So king c3 played, b4, d3, b5, a takes back, and now rook b2 could actually be met with the very strong pawn to g6. But Vidit missed it in the time pressure, because if black takes, that pawn is just running. The king covers this square. You know, you can't get back. It's going through. Yeah, you can give a check, but okay, we drop. You still can't get across. Game over, right? So after you push, black wouldn't even be able to take here. They'd have to meekly come back. It's completely gone. But rook d5 was played by Vidit, responding to the threat, and now king c4 played, hitting the rook. We get rook back to d8, and the pawn drops off the board. So a blunder by Vidit, but he is still winning because he's still a pawn up. He's still got his rook behind this passer, and the black rook is in a really tough situation. So g6 played, rook b7 stops the advance, but king f5, king c3 to support this one, king f6, rook b6 check, and now here Vidit had a very simple win with king to f7. because if the black rook carries on checking, you hide on the back rank, covered by the rook. And how do you stop the pawn? You just can't. Yes, you can push your own, but here's the problem. White's got the extra, this one runs through, wins the day. So this simple king march would have done the job. But king g5 played, king b5 check, and Vidit now had to go back for this option, but goes king h6. And he suddenly is drawing the game. It looks like he shouldn't be. It looks like the pawn is running through, but there's this amazing trick. Now let's switch to the clip of Danya when he realizes there's a draw on the board.
Rook f5 draw! Rook f5 draw!
Wow. Unbelievable.
He squandered it.
Unbelievable.
Rook takes f3.
Oh my god.
And black will win the newly promoted queen.
Alright, let's hit pause a minute and analyse what's happening here. Why is Danya screaming draw? Well, after rook f5, now this pawn kicked on to g7. Black took here, as you just saw, and then Vidit chucked in a check. Why did he do that? Well, if you make a queen now here, the problem is black can check. You force the king to the g file, and then you check from here. And not only do you pick up this pawn that just promoted to a queen, but after the rook recaptures, this one advances, and the king and rook are too far away to work in combination and round up the pawn. So if you come back, bring the rook behind, the king marches forward, and this king's just too far away. You know, if you do that, we make a queen, the rook has to give up, that's a dead draw. And if instead you check, well, fine, big deal, we step away, the pawn's about to promote, so you have to come back behind. King steps to promote again. Yes, you can check again, but it just goes on. It's a drawing mechanism, right? So this is the problem with making a queen. This is why we see check from the back rank, but now watch this reaction because of what happens in the game, and I'll play it out through.
Rook f5 draw!
Wow. Unbelievable.
He squandered
Unbelievable.
it. Rook takes f3.
Oh my god.
And black will win the newly promoted queen. And he.
Oh my
Bluebaum.
god.
Oh, but he lost it.
Rook
And he lost
c5.
it. He had to go king d4 to stop rook c5, and black-white will win. Oh.
Unbelievable.
No frickin' way. That's it.
Unbelievable. I cannot believe what we have just witnessed.
There was a draw. Black had to go anywhere but where he went. He allowed this bridge construction. And if he had gone up with his king, it was an instant draw. And now he will play until the bitter end. It is mate.
Unbelievable, because he find the defense, yeah? He find this rook f5, rook takes f3. Unbelievable, he cannot believe. And Vidit through to the next round. What a drama.
So what an absolutely incredible finish, but I'm rewinding it back here. So what is the move that Bluebaum should have played? Well, instead of going king d2 and blocking the advance of his own pawn, he should have gone king to b2. Because now, if you come behind the pawn, well, there's king c2 and it's just running through. Because you get this same mechanism once again, but the pawn can actually advance. This is the key thing. When you put the king on b2, you don't block the pawn advancing. So let's run it back here. And one other line to show, Daniel was calling for king to d4 to stop this rook c5 idea, building that bridge. But actually, now white wins in a different way. Because you can promote, you can check like this, go for the same thing, but this time there's a problem with your king on the d file, because white comes back just in time with the rook and king and eats the pawn. And if instead in this position here after rook takes, you don't go king c3, you check from, you advance the pawn, well then there's the check from behind. King goes, king comes in, and you've just got a problem, you can't hold the pawn. King c2, well okay, it's dropping off. If you make a queen, dropping off, you know, just game over. So king d4 doesn't actually work. King b2, only winning move. What a phenomenal finish in this round of the Chess World Cup. I hope you enjoyed. Do subscribe to not miss any future games. Hit like if you enjoyed, really helps me out. And to check out another epic game, do see the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching and see you soon.